All right. So this is the collab review session for manage and manage of shares and snapshots for the CephFS drivers. Um, yeah, manage and manage. It's something already well known for us in Manila because there are plenty drivers already implementing it. So it's pretty much being able to bring a share or snapshot that already exists under Manila management. So it could have been created by uh, another cloud, or it could have been created manually, and then you would be able to bring that up and have Manila managing the life cycle. So in summary, or in short, that's what this feature is about. It's a well-known topic for us in Manila, and we've discussed this at the PTG as well. So this feels like an update as well of what we have been working on. And yeah, today I'm going to share a bit of the work that I've been doing for this and the implementation of it for the CephFS drivers. So yeah, it's been a while since I don't update the commit message, but I think it's still relevant. Sorry about that, and I don't think yeah, something would have changed. So in this case, there were a couple of different things when working on manage and manage for CephFS drivers because um, there are a couple of roadblocks we've hit. And they ended up becoming trackers to the Ceph team. I'll pretty much mention them in a bit. Just had the link copied. But the first one is for manage and manage. How do you tell Manila what's the share that you would like to manage? Well, currently we specify the host and the export location of the share so that the share backend can go ahead and, or also, sorry, the share type. So the share backend can go ahead and query the share, and it will know what is the share that's currently being managed. So that's pretty much the first thing that we would like to do, and the first thing that we needed to work around, which is instead of providing the export location of the share, we needed to provide the subvolume or subvolume snapshot name in the export or the provider location parameter, because we don't have that ability to filter the subvolumes in snapshot or the volumes and snapshots in the Ceph storage by their export location or their provider location. So this is going to be kind of like a slight change in terms of usability. I've added this in the commit message. And I think this one action item, the first action item that I can take from this patch is I should, or I have the opportunity to update the documentation here as already, so we can already ship it with documentation and don't create extra bugs. So I think that would be one of the first things that I can mention here in an action item for me. um, yeah, the second thing is the size of the snapshots will follow the share size, as we cannot currently be sure of the real size of the snapshot. Yes, this is something we've hit, and it also became a tracker in the with the Ceph team. We've opened a bug with them and mentioned, or it is going to be more like an RFE, because whenever you try to list snapshots or get the information of a snapshot in the Ceph backends, it doesn't retrieve you the size. So what we are currently doing to work around that is we are pretty much reusing this share size for it, and then yeah, we take it for granted. If and there is also another condition that we will reuse, like a default size, but it's only when the share size is infinite. But we'll get to that. Uh, yeah, which is the next bullet. We will attempt to resize the subvolumes whose size are infinite. So in Manila, we don't have that concept of infinite shares because we need to account for the quotas of every single share. So, but in CephFS, you can have shares which quota is set as to infinite, so the share could keep growing, but we don't allow that. So what we are doing is we are defining or working on a way to avoid the shares having infinite size and then limiting it to a certain size. And then now we are starting to store the provider location of the snapshots before their creation, because then they could be reused later. This could be a separate change, and also it's like some feedback that I would like to get. I mean, we used to do not report the provide the location of snapshots, and we try to understand if it was made by design. But I think it's just because we didn't need it, as per we realized later. So in the snapshot creation now, we start to report back the provider location of the snapshots. So looking over the changes, first thing we would like to do, yes, the how we are or resizing the shares and snapshots that are being managed when they have their size set to infinite. Well, we are defining a new config option. I'm defining a new config option. Um, it's which is called CephFS default infinite share size, because we need to get a size for that share, and it shouldn't have, like, the infinite quota still. So yeah, this is an integer value that should indicate the amount of gigabytes that a share should be resized during the share manage process. If the share is bigger than that, if we try to resize the share and it's bigger than the amount of gigabytes, then we just say the infinite size shouldn't be that. So we'll get to that in the implementation. And we also start using the private storage because of the thing with the export location. So yeah, here is pretty much defining the private storage and starting to use it. Private storage, you might know, like it's something that we can use with the drivers. A lot of drivers do that already. That they can save information in the in the database uh, regarding its operation. So you can pretty much use have like a separate table within the driver. You can store like key value stuff related to a specific resource, and then it allows you to uh, pretty much do anything you'd like with the private storage, and you won't access the actual Manila database in this case. It's kind of like not a very good practice. We've come to the conclusion over the past to have multiple like database calls. For example, having the driver calling get shares from, for example, like, or shares get whatever. So private storage is one thing that we consider that is a nice thing to be able to save things in the database that are pretty much related to the driver. So started using that. You'll see why in a bit. Then a couple of things, like to be able to work around uh, the inability to modify the snapshot or subvolume snapshot name. The thing is, we get I think it's a limitation that I didn't say it earlier in this meeting, but we talked about this in the PTG. We can't rename subvolumes and subvolume snapshots in the Ceph in the Ceph backend. So what it happens in this case is we need to have a way to map what the share is called in Manila to what is the name of the share in the backend. So get sub name and get sub volume snapshot name is pretty much the what we are doing here, right? It's a way for me to use the private storage to create a mapping between the share name in the backend and the share name in Manila. So we're going to be calling get sub volume name and get sub volume snapshot name all over the place because all of the operations will need it. So and there will be a couple of changes related to it. For example, like get export locations or any information that we usually use to get the sub volume name, just to maintain backwards compatibility. Otherwise, if it is a managed share, then the subvolume name that we would use, which would be the share instance ID, it won't work because the Ceph driver will try to look for a subvolume that has the name set to the share instance ID, but it wasn't a share created by the by Manila, and it wasn't renamed by Manila. So we call this method the get subvolume name everywhere, just to ensure that we are getting the name, and if the share or snapshot is was managed, not created by Manila, then we will get the right name to interact with it in the backend. So that's pretty much what this get subvolume name is about. There will be a lot of changes with regards to this with this get export location thing. Um, because as I said, like we need every single place that we interact with the subvolumes or with the shares in the backend. Um, if we don't have the proper name, then it's gonna be like a not found. So we need to update this everywhere. Um, yeah. So now going to the manage existing part, we try to get the path, and we already say like it's the subvolume name, and we assume that. So if there isn't a subvolume name provided, then first thing we do is raising an exception, and then to get the size of the subvolume, we do of the share, we get the information of the share with the backend, and if does not exist, then we pretty much throw a not found error, and then this is pretty much for logging. We can't change the CephFS volume mode, and it's configured by Manila. So not I think in the manage lifecycle, like we fixed a bug about this in the a couple of months ago or like a year ago, with regards to changing the volume mode of the volumes. So if the volume mode is different, we won't do anything at this point, and we'll just like log saying that the volume mode configuring Manila is different to what the subvolume has, and then try to get the size of the share. If it equals to infinite, then we try to resize it using the configuration option. If we don't find a default, then we just throw an exception. Otherwise, we attempt resizing. If we attempt to resize, then we would run into the share shrinking possible data loss, because that's pretty much what we do. Like when the share is already bigger, then or when we try to resize the share to something that's smaller than what's already written in the share, then we get this exception. So trying to catch that. And then if we get another kind of exception, we just raise the error that was found there. Otherwise, if there is size, an integer size, then we try to understand if the size is valid, and pretty much proceed with the whole operation. So we save, create a mapping. So for the subvolume name in the backend to the share instance ID. So we save, I call it share metadata, and then I go to private storage and say this share instance ID maps to this subvolume name, and then that's pretty much what's happening here. Whenever I try to get the share instance ID, I'll go through that method, and then it will return the correct subvolume name. And the same is going to be done for snapshots, by the way. But I save that data in the database, and then get the export locations for the share, because we are managing it and we need to report them back to Manila. And then return the size of the share, the final size of the share, and then the export locations for the share. This is pretty much like the regular workflow, and what we need to return to Manila. Like we need to say what are these attributes for the share. And then the next one would be manage existing snapshot. For manage existing snapshot, that's kind of the same thing. Try to get the provider location, which is in this case the same thing as it would be for the export location. If none was provided, then we throw some errors. Try to get the subvolume name here, again protecting us against failing while to retrieve, because if it was a managed subvolume and we are trying to manage a subvolume snapshot from that subvolume, then we would be in trouble. So we always need to keep getting the mapping for that. Otherwise, like some things might fail. We get the subvolume information, and we get the size of the subvolume because that's another issue we ran into, and I mentioned about it. Subvolume info command does not tell us what's the size of the subvolume snapshot. So that's the tricky part here. And then we get the size of the subvolume and assume that is the size of the snapshot. We know this is not the ideal. I know that it's not the ideal, because there is a chance, for example, that the snapshot was taken. Let's say that we have a scenario like there is a snapshot that was taken from when the share was 10 gigabytes, and then the whole 10 gigabytes is consumed, and then some data is deleted, and then the shares, we shrink the share to like 5 gigabytes. So if the snapshot is 10 gigabytes and the share is 5, then we are not accounting the quotas, like we are missing the older 5 gigs of quota. So we know that's not ideal, but I think that's the only way that we found about this. And this tracker is already a way that we are using to interact with the Ceph team and ask for that so that they can report to us the sub-volume size. Yeah, we proceed with that. We list the subvolume snapshots. If the provided provider location or subvolume snapshot name is not in the list, then we say it wasn't found. Um, the same thing, like if there aren't subvolume snapshots for the subvolume, we say it not found as well. And here, the same thing about the mapping. Um, with the same thing about the mapping, we will pretty much map the snapshot name to the snapshot instance or the snapshot ID as we are doing elsewhere in the driver. So just one note, yeah, for us in the future, when the tracker gets resolved, then we can go ahead and reuse the size that the driver is telling us to. So here, it's pretty much the same thing I told you. Like I needed to touch a lot of parts in the code to ensure that it was not going to break whenever we had a share that was managed before. So delete share, we need to ensure that we are getting the proper share name. So I did a lot of changes to a bunch of other methods in the driver, and most of those are pretty much here. Yeah, so I think from now on it's gonna be pretty much unit tests and so volume names and stuff like that. Um, and yeah, this is also like part of the changes that I need to do about with regards to providing the proper subvolume snapshot name or subvolume name. Now it's like unit tests, try to get a decent amount of coverage for both of the methods that I am doing, and also like fix the unit tests that are failing at the moment. And yeah, now we go to the next part, which is testing. That you see like that there are three main patches proposed for this feature. So do you have any questions for this first thing before I go to the testing part of this of this?
No, pretty good. I think we can take I had a couple of concerns, but we can do that over code reviews. But it looks pretty good.
Sure, thank you. Um, yeah, so we have two other changes here. Uh, this one is pretty much about enabling the functional tests for the CephFS protocol. And I mean, NFS is already enabled, so we are good, right? We have CephFS NFS and CephFS native. So I'm pretty much enabling the tests. And there's another change that I needed to work on in order to get the test running and passing. So this is the other change that I'm referring to. So it's called support managing shares and snapshots through instance IDs. Um, yeah, so this is pretty much because I'm trying to adapt some tests to the scenarios where people can't manage through the export path or through the provider location. That's pretty much what I'm doing here. So some drivers do not support looking up shares or snapshots by using their export paths. So in such cases, the drivers will search for the shares using their identifiers in the storage backend. So to adapt to this scenario, in this change, we needed to introduce a new configuration option so that we can configure the usage or non-usage of share instance IDs instead of the export paths or provider locations, and adapt the tests considering the new configuration option. So this configuration that I'm talking about is I called it, it's like a huge name. It's called use share instance ID instead of location on manage. And it defaults to false. And then the drivers that want to run the tests and would like to use the share instance ID or the ID in the backend, they can do the changes. And yeah, pretty much some checks, like when this config option is enabled, instead of using the export path, we will use the share instance ID. And pretty much the related changes to that, like managing updating the managed export path, created a method to reuse a couple of things, and fixing some of the tests, because manage tests with Manila Tempest plugin, they are pretty much straightforward in a sense that we will create our own shares and then we will manage them and then we will try to manage them back. Because I mean, there is no way that we can determine if there is a share already in a dev stack that was already created before. So that's how it goes. And we pretty much know that if the backend is using the share instance ID to save this, then we can pretty much reuse the share instance ID. And in this case, we would only have one share instance. So these are the changes, pretty much adapting that to what we have for share manage negative. Now, snapshot manage, same thing, just trying to adapt it to the new configuration option and having the test passing. The API base now for the create, share, for manage, as we are constantly using the share instance information to get to understand if there is the need to use the export location ID instead of the sorry, using the share instance ID instead of the share export location. Then yeah, I'm pretty much saving the share instances and performing an extra get here. Um, but yeah, that's pretty much it for this change. Then we can see the results of the change in the change that I'm enabling the testing. So it depends on the other change that I just mentioned, which is um, the share instance ID one. And if we look through Zoo summary, everything is passing on the native one. CephFS, NFS, it didn't. There were a couple of failures that the CI wasn't even getting to run. I think this one we had a run, and I need to take a look through the results. But at least for CephFS native, everything is passing. Like all of the tests they ran, and everything is looking fine. So test, share, manage, CephFS. So for test, for best, and then only two skips. One is manage share without share server ID. We don't have JDSS true, so like it's not because of the protocol. And test and manage share with server unsupported. So skip that as well. Not a JDSS true driver. Yeah, there is also the others are setup class. So if I check snapshot manage, then there are the other tests that we also ran, four of them passing, yeah, and one being skipped. Yeah, I can look at this zoo build. There might be something that I will need to change for the CephFS NFS protocol, of course. But yeah, for CephF, I was last week I was pretty much focusing on CephFS native to get everything in shape, and now I just need to figure out the CI failures for CephFS NFS. So yeah, talked a lot. I think that's it for this change. Do you guys have any questions or suggestions, or would like to share feedback only on the reviews, stuff like that?
You mentioned some Ceph trackers.
Yeah, we have at least one of them. The other one we didn't proceed with the tracker, but this Ceph tracker is called CephFS subvolume snapshot info. Does not provide a size attribute, which is the issue that I was mentioning. Like we are managing a snapshot. We expect to know the name of the snapshot, but we don't because Ceph doesn't provide us that. So what we do in this case, well, we are reusing the share size, but it's not ideal, as I said, because shares can be resized, and the snapshot could have like a bigger size than what the share was resized to. So ideally, we wouldn't reuse the current share size, but we are doing that because we need to report a size.
Right. So, would we? I mean, the tracker it'll be eventually an enhancement. So I'm not sure when Ceph can, get that out there. What What's the plan? It is just a follow up patch once that's out.
Yeah, it should be a follow-up patch for us.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a fix proposed to this already. But yeah, we will need to whenever we get here. I think the code will look a bit less complex than it looks right now because we won't need to reuse the CephFS or the subvolume size. We will just be able to use the size that's been provided to us in the FS subvolume snapshot info, which is here. We already doing no, we are not doing that. I'm not doing that call. So it's gonna be like an extra call to the Ceph driver to get the uh, subvolume information, subvolume snapshot information, and then we will get the size of it.
Okay, I see. All right. Could you add that tracker to the commit message
But yeah,
of the original patch just so it's there?
yeah, sure.
Thanks.
I think you can avoid that extra call if you're just doing a subvolume info, right? There is a subvolume info command. That's what we're asking for.
Yeah,
Subvolume snapshot, not sorry, subvolume snapshot info. The
yeah,
command gets really long, but there is one.
yeah. That would be better than going through the list of every single snapshots and checking if they are available there.
Yeah,
I think I just didn't. I mean, it's even better if I do that right now, right? Um,
right. If the data is there at some point, you're just going to get it. If not, you're just going to fall back to your conservative approach of looking at the share size. I think you got another response from Craig on. I mean, he was one of these early CephFS developers,
yeah.
and he's saying that technically the snapshot size cannot be relied upon, even if we did provide it.
Oh,
So
Dang.
yeah, it kind of makes sense also because I mean, what we are asking for is a way that cloud providers like I mean those that manage OpenStack installations have a way to charge for this, right? But eventually, what gets actually consumed in the storage is not really the size that we're going to ascertain the quotas based on. For example, like something like CephFS or something like NetApp, or most of them are very efficient in the way they deal with snapshots, and so you wouldn't be consuming space unless things changed. Um, I think something like ONTAP is very efficient even when things change. Um, but let's say CephFS, pretty good efficiency. If you said you took a snapshot of a 10 gigabyte share, it's not really a 10 gigabyte snapshot. Um, it's probably it starts out with 0 gigabytes, and then as the share changes, it starts increasing in size. So it would be wrong to report something unless it's actually counting what's consumed on the back end, and that's very hard.
yeah. That makes sense. Thank you. Any other questions or suggestions or concerns? Right, taking silence as though. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, I will update the change with the suggested approaches here. Um, and yeah, I'll start tagging some reviewers and figure out the remaining issues on the NFS driver.